Hello and welcome to the Flex. It's Matt St. Jean here for a special episode between Christmas and New Year's, talking Providence at Butler this Thursday night. I'm joined by Michael DeRosa, our Butler writer for Road to the Garden. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's always good. Everybody else is coming back. Our teams get a bit of a break. But it's always good to talk hoops. Always.
Always, always. Just a reminder before we get into this. First, if you're looking for tickets for this game Thursday night at Hinkle Fieldhouse, we've teamed up with SeatGeek this season to get you the best deals for tickets to your favorite teams. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, and they're here to give you some great deals. Get in on the fun and head over to SeatGeek, download their app, and use code NCAA Hoops Digest for $20 off your first purchase. And also, this podcast is presented by House Enterprise and in partnership with House of College Hoops. Head over to our site, house-enterprise.com, for more info. Make sure to check that out. Now, Michael, this is the first time Providence and Butler have met since the Friars ended the Laval Jordan era at the Big East tournament back at Madison Square Garden. You want to catch up the Friar fans on what has transpired since Al Durham hit that shot at MSG?
Yeah, a lot of chaos. You had Coach Jordan as you mentioned, getting canned April 1st. So when I woke up and saw it on my phone, I thought it was an April Fool's joke. No, they just wanted to save money. Then a little bit of pessimism. Then you bring in Coach Mata, and it's like, I don't know how you pulled that one out, but you did. Props to you. But almost completely different roster. You'll notice some of the same guys like Chuck Harris, Jaden Taylor, CMOS coaches, but they are joined by NC State transfer Manny Bates inside. He's pretty good. Eric Hunter, Purdue guard last season. Big Ten all defensive team. Ali, Jalen Thomas, guys like that, other transfers who are getting healthy. That's mini right up on Butler. They're 8-5, I believe now. Lost to 5 pretty good teams. Beat 8 teams. Good Kansas State team, big win. Got smoked by UConn and Tennessee. That's very brief. I think that covers almost all of it.
Yeah, that should do it. I mean, the losses for Butler this year are, for the most part, all pretty understandable. At Penn State, a very good Penn State team this year against Tennessee, against NC State, and then the two Big East games there. I do not envy the scheduling there, having to deal with Creighton and UConn in the first 2 games. I don't even think Butler looked bad in either one of those games. Butler is a team that's trying to make the NCAA tournament, and those are games against teams that are trying to win the NCAA tournament. They're 2 different worlds.
We can get into the nitty-gritty a little later, but I'm fine with the UConn performance. Like, that's a bad matchup, and you look good for 33 minutes, 30, something like that. The Creighton game, that was demoralizing. The point differential says it all in that game. UConn game got ugly late. It was like a 1-point game with like 8 minutes left-ish. Creighton, that game was over at halftime. The guys.
Yeah, that one. If I'm remembering the math here correctly, Butler led that one 16-7.
Yep.
And then it got outscored 71-40 the rest of the way over the final about 32-ish minutes. Yep. Not great.
No, not at all. And like when they got ahead early, it wasn't like there was no point where you're like, oh, they're winning this game. This is it. It was like they made 3 bad passes. The ball just fell to them, and they got open looks.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, that's how it goes. We're looking at this Butler roster. I think the name that's going to headline it is Manny Bates there at center, the transfer from NC State. For Providence fans, I am a huge fan of watching Manny Bates at Butler because he reminds me of Nate Watson for the Friars the last couple of years. He's a little bit of that kind of back to the basket traditional center in some ways. He'll get some blocks on defense. He's really good around the rim. One of the best shot blockers in the Big East. What do you think he's brought to Butler this year?
Man, Manny Bates I like the Nate Watson comp. I would say he's a little less physically strong, little better touch around the rim. But man, Manny Bates has been huge. In games that they've won, the 2 biggest games are probably the the Kansas State game. That was Manny Bates put on a show. He had 22 points, 10 boards, 9 of 11 shooting. Like, dude, he was incredible that game. He was the difference maker in that game. In the Yale game, and that's a decent Yale team, 22 points, 7 boards. Again, great game. In the BYU game, he only had 14, but it was like he was really impactful. Multiple like assist. He's a decent passer for a big guy too, which is kind of like surprising. Good athlete, man. He is a complete difference maker, and the defense is so much better. Going from a guy like Bryce Golden, who isn't like a legit shot blocker, isn't like a physically imposing presence, to Manny Bates just makes so much of a difference. And man, they had 6 guys. Butler had 6 guys for a lot of time this year. Manny Bates' conditioning, a big guy who can play 40 minutes of a physically intense game, that is not easy whatsoever. It was incredibly impressive, and he was the reason Butler has stayed afloat in the season so far. He's the guy.
Yeah, he's been huge. You talk about the difference in shot blocking. Butler was 311th in shot block percentage on defense last year, and now up to 57th in the country coming into this game Thursday night. Now, yeah, that's night and day what you can do around the rim there. Now, if we come a little bit away from the basket, I think we talked about this last week. Ali is healthy. He's only played 2 games this year. He's the 4 for you guys, power forward?
Probably. It's a lot of 4 out, 1 in. It feels like more just 4 guards.
So he is defensively probably going to be the guy that has to handle Bryce Hopkins, is I think what's most important here. I know we talked about this, guys in that role, particularly Keontae Johnson for Kansas State, have given Butler issues this year. That was before Ali came in. Do you think that his presence is going to be a significant factor in this one because he'll be a step up?
Not particularly. I'm not. Bryce Hopkins is that dude. Like, you look at a guy like Keontae Johnson, very similar to Bryce Hopkins, as you mentioned, 6'6", 230, but like a built, chiseled 230. He just completely bullied Butler. He had 22 points, didn't miss a shot, and had, I think, like 9 or 10 boards. 12 boards, my bad. 20 points, 12 boards, my bad. Probably faster, better athlete. Ooh, cutout lag. We move on. Like, just excellent athlete. Oh, get on me, Timbers.
I can hear you. Keep on going.
We good?
Yeah.
Yeah. Bryce Hopkins, good athlete, like probably more athletically sound. Both guys can space you out, shoot the 3. Against what Butler did against Keontae Johnson, I'm expecting very similar against Bryce Hopkins, is they did everything to deny him the ball. But then once he gets the ball, it's like, all right, just if we can get a steal, great. If not, we'll leave a guy on an island. Hopefully we get a stop. Don't let anyone else go off. I expect him to do almost the exact same thing with Bryce Hopkins. I expect Bryce Hopkins to have a big game. And this is a tough matchup for Ali just coming off of a broken nose and a concussion. Bryce Hopkins, physical. He's pretty physical too. Sometimes that stuff just gets in your head. You're like, I don't want to get hit with an elbow here or there, stuff like that. So I still think Bryce Hopkins goes ballistic.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the matchup to watch in this one, at least when the Friars have the ball. How does Butler try to defend him? Can they take him away? So if they can't, that right there could make this a very, very long night for the Bulldogs. Now, of course, you mentioned the Kansas State game. Butler did win the Kansas State game, despite the defensive issues in that one. I want to talk about this Butler offense here, because I think the other interesting storyline here is Butler's three-point shooting and how inconsistent it has been this year and for a couple seasons now, going up against the Friars defense, three-point defense that has just not been good this year. It's gotten better as of late, but it has not been a very good three-point defense. And this kind of feels like 2 weaknesses going against each other for each one of these teams. I'm interested to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I would agree. Three-point shooting for Butler has been big in games they either win or lose. And wins, by the way, I calculated this. Credit to me. I mean, come on. Numbers guy right here. In wins,
big
Butler's
math guy.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Math. I'm so good with Google Calculator, you have no idea. In wins, Butler is 67 of 161 from 3. That's 41%. 41.6%. That's really good. Really good. In losses, 21 of 92. 22%. That is terrible. Those numbers are staggering. If Butler's not hitting shots, they're not going to win a game. They can hit threes. It's going to be a long night. So if Providence's three-point defense isn't showing up, and it really hasn't this season, could be some points scored.
Yeah, and could be a get-right game for a team that's looking to shoot the ball a little bit better. I think one part of this is Eric Hunter. He was a guy I actually scouted a lot this offseason because I was curious about him. And he's the type of guy who, again, another comparison for Friar fans, he's like AJ Reeves in that you're kind of going to know in the first 5 minutes if he's having a good game or not. He's either hitting shots and being aggressive and assertive and knows what he's doing, or he's going to take a back seat and all his shots are going to be late. They're going to be contested. They're not going to be in rhythm, and it's just not going to be on that night. Is that what you've seen from him this year? I know that's what they got at Purdue.
Yeah, 100%. That you hit the nail on the head. It's almost like in those same games, though, he's not as active defensively. Like he kind of gets in his own head a bit, which you don't really expect from a grad transfer senior. But yeah, in the 2 Big East games, he is 2 of 14 from the field for 4 points. You need better than that out of a guy who's playing 61 minutes in those games. He's going to need to step up. If you want to win Big East games, you need Eric Hunter being that guy. You want to win big games, Eric Hunter's going to have to step up. And maybe not, he doesn't have to be the guy scoring, but hit a couple open shots and get teammates in good spots to where they can score. Eric Hunter's going to have to take a leap up, and he is definitely capable of it.
Yeah, I think he's a guy who you could also compare to Al Durham, who was in Providence last year, a Big Ten transfer to the Big East, who took kind of a complementary role in the offense, but also hit the shots when needed, made big plays, and had good plays at the defensive end too, played with toughness. Like Eric Hunter can be that guy for this Butler team. We just haven't seen that same consistency from him.
Yeah, not at all. He in games like, man, it's just, you can tell in the first like minute or so, if you're getting good Eric Hunter, it's like, all right, we're screwed here. Or, oh, we got this. Like BYU game, 19 points, 6 of 9. I think he got going early. Same thing in the Kansas State game, 5 of 11, 13 points. Not great, but like he was active defensively. Him stopping Marquise Knoll on the other end. Marquise Knoll was like 5 of 15. Very good guard for Kansas State. Kind of like, never mind. That's a bad comparison. But yeah, like you need him getting going versus against Penn State, 1 of 10. And like more or less your 3 biggest games, or 4 biggest games, even you throw Tennessee in there too. He just hasn't been the guy, and you lose those games. You need him. If you want to win big games, you need Eric Hunter to be something.
Yep. He has been in double figures for every Butler win and in single digits for 4 out of the 5 losses.
There you go.
Yeah. So this is the Butler team. We'll just go down the stats here real quick. Chuck Harris is the leading scorer. He's got 14 a game. Manny Bates, 13.5. Jaden Taylor, 13.5 there as a sophomore. I think he's been a real nice player for Thad Matta and the Bulldogs. Seamus Lukosius, 11 points. Also the assist leader there. Eric Hunter, 10.9 points. I do notice the rebounds seem to be very, very spread out here in an interesting way. 4 guys averaging over 4 rebounds per game. But then there's a drop-off. After Eric Hunter, of the guys who have played most of this season, you go from 10.9 points a game to 3.4 with Pierce Thomas. This is where you're hoping some of those transfers we talked about step up. Ali in 2 games, 6.5 points a game. Jalen Thomas in 2 games, 4 points per game. That's that depth that Thad Matta is looking for, and I think that can make Butler a different team here in Big East play than the team we saw in non-conference.
Man, you talk about like a rough start to the schedule. You guys are finally getting healthy, and you have to go against UConn at home, on the road against Creighton. It's like, gosh, man, yeah. No favors by the schedule gods and the injury gods. It's just came together.
No,
not at all.
And this is where I think this is where for the Friars you get kind of a little bit scared going into this one because you're going to be facing a desperate team here. There's a big difference between losing 2 in a row and losing 3 in a row, especially with one of those games at home here. And this is it's not a must win for Butler, but it feels close to it for this team to be a tournament team. Whereas the Friars just got a pair of really good wins under their belt before Christmas. So I think you're in this interesting point where the motivation level for each one of these teams may be a little bit different. The Friars might have to be extra locked in at the start of this.
They say hungry dogs run faster. That's definitely going to be tested. And you talk about like this break too. Providence goes into Christmas. Oh, mercy. Family. Come on. We're so good. We're the best. Butler goes into Christmas. We're like, we've lost 2 games by combined 44 points. Nah. They ain't no fun, ain't no Christmas, nothing. We got to lock in. We got to win some games. So I feel like in the beginning, because last game, as I mentioned earlier, it looked like Butler quit. It kind of looked like they just were like, no, we're done. Thad questioned their toughness at one point. I think Creighton immediately after that went on like an 8-0 run. That was it. They got killed on the glass. Butler's not a particularly good rebounding team, as you mentioned. They're like in the 200s in like defensive rebounding percentage. I just found that while you were talking. Like they're just it's if you play like that against Providence, if you try to play like scared against Providence, you are not beating an Ed Cooley team. That is not happening.
No,
Providence
no,
just you have to play tough if you want to play Providence. And they backed down last game. You can't back down in this one.
no. But I think one of the things that makes this series interesting too is we talked about the game at MSG last year, where, by the way, the Friars are on a 9-game rest coming into this game this week. They were on a 9-day rest going into that tournament game against Butler. They kind of laid an egg against Butler, but pulled out enough to get the win. You go back earlier into the season, and the game that kind of gets lost in there, the Friars have a letdown there at home against Villanova, the only home loss they had all last season. They go on the road at Butler without Al Durham, who's banged up, and they almost lose that one. They barely pull out a win. They were down huge in that game. They were down by 19 points at Hinkle last year and were able to actually pull a comeback in overtime, had some crazy plays there at the end of overtime to come away with the win. A truly bizarre game in every way. There was a players-only meeting on the sideline of that one too, about partway through from the Friars to kind of get them going. And these teams have played a couple of weird games lately. Weird things happen at Hinkle. Weird things happen when you get a lot of rest and you can be a little bit rusty. I don't know. This feels like a game where the stats are not going to tell the full story going into it.
Oh, I would agree 100%. But you said one thing, and I'd kill to say my team laid an egg against Villanova and for that game to be close with 5 minutes left. I'd kill for that. Oh my gosh.
Let me tell you, that game, I did some of the math on that one last year, and I've now realized Ken Palm kind of has a tool for it. My math was not that necessary. I think the Friars trailed for over 30 minutes in the game, but for most of the game, it was between 1 and 2 possession difference. That game was within striking distance the entire time, but the Friars basically never led. One of the strangest games I've never felt like. It was never a blowout, but the Friars never felt like they ever had control. It felt like Villanova got out to a lead right off the bat, and then it just stayed at that margin for 40 minutes.
Yeah, I remember watching that game. That feels about right. That feels about, you definitely remember it better than I do. But I remember just that game being like close at the end. Bynum hits a big shot, and you're like, oh, and then Gillespie hits a shot, and you're like, oh, damn it.
Well, and it was. I wrote an article about that one. Villanova abused the same thing all game long with that high screen, and the Friars were dropping on it, and it happened on the first basket of the game, and it happened on the last basket of the game for Villanova, and it was just like those two, and they're both threes. In both of those baskets, that felt like the margin. Like that was the game right there. Those two.
Man, going back to the Butler Providence game last year, the one in Hinkle, I was there.
Mm-hmm.
I was like front student section, and I always took the side closest to the opponent because you can heckle. That's more fun. It's the thing. But man, I just remember that game, and it's like, man, we feel like halftime we're up pretty big. We're like, oh, we got this. Then you extend the lead a little. It's like, oh my, they might actually win. Then it's like, never mind, it's Providence. I think Jared Bynum in a couple big shots, but I remember Nora Horkler, I believe, went ballistic. Like they ran a couple like good sets for him, and it's like, and he just made everything. It was just so many just ridiculous shots, and the game goes to overtime. You're like, there's no way Butler pulls this one off. No shot.
Yeah.
They didn't.
Watson had 22. Horkler had 15 points, 3 of 8 from deep. One of those threes was, I don't know if it was the one to tie it. I remember him hitting one late. Bynum 18 points. That was in the middle of his red hot February where he just was not missing. He was on that one, and 5 assists for him. And it was just, it's funny. You look back at some of these stats. Andrew Fonts had a 3 in that game for the Friars. I think that was at the end of the first half. The walk-on, who Ed Cooley likes to throw in a walk-on if he's not happy with his team's effort. He'll just throw it in there, run a press on defense, and let the guy go get some fouls, and then send the other guys back in there and say that's how it's done.
Man, my AAU coach would do almost the exact same thing. To the DeRosa, get in there, fucking take it to him. Got it, coach. Anytime.
Sounds about right. Hey, you know what? Watch out, because Thad Matta might do it to you too.
Oh,
you're gonna get a call from the bench there.
Yeah, he's got the guy. Finally, we've got a rock where you can say, all right, yo, out.
Yeah.
Put effort in. You have enough guys where you can finally do something like that.
Yeah. All right, I want to start to wrap this up here. Well, before we do though, one last question. We're at the end of 2022 here, and we're getting into about the halfway mark of Thad Matta's first season back at Butler. What are your impressions on what you've seen so far?
This is a really tough Butler team to get like a full, complete, like, I know I've watched every second of every game just about. And you struggle to be like, I don't know if I really have a great grasp on this team. It's really weird. But my impression of them so far is they're a well-coached group. They don't foul a ton. Like they were in the bottom, like they were the team that fouled the fewest in the country before the Creighton game when they just kind of started fouling a ton and just were like, all right, we're done foul. But they're still second in the country in fewest fouls. Very disciplined defensively. They're a smart team. They're kind of like a jack of all trades, but master of none. You're kind of good at everything. You have a good center. You can rebound well enough. You can shoot well enough. You have playmakers who do enough, but you're never like elite at any one thing. They're not great athletically. Like teams like Tennessee and UConn just destroyed them athletically. NC State just quicker. But at the same time, it's like this team is smart. They don't foul. They defend well. It's tough to get easy buckets against Butler. And like they come in with like a good game plan. Almost every time you're like, all right, this game plan, aside from the Penn State game, this game plan it puts them in a position to win a game. They're smart, but they're not, I don't know, they're just not there yet. They're not where you want them to be. That's my impression so far. It's a tough team to get like a grasp on.
So if Butler does end up winning this one, what's the headline after the game?
Bounce back, big bounce back win. This is much needed win. Build some momentum. You play, I believe it's Georgetown and DePaul in the next two. Got to win those two. 3-2 in the conference. That looks pretty good, especially when you've played the two best teams in the conference. Granted, you've also played the two worst, but still. You can manipulate that headline and make yourself look great. But man, you need this win. You need for the momentum, really. Like you cannot 0-3. It's crippling. It's just no. I don't want to be there. You're gonna have to win this one. You're gonna have to pull it out against a tough Providence team. You're gonna have to grit it out. You're gonna have to show the stuff that Butler is known for, and not the game we saw against Creighton.
I think unlike the games these two teams played last year, the Friars can't afford to get down early in this one. I think that'll be a much tougher test to come back, especially because if Butler gets hot early, we saw them get hot early against Creighton and then not be able to hold on. But with the Friars defense, it feels like if Butler comes out hot at home, then they might just stay hot. And it's not really going to matter what else you do. I think the Friars kind of found that out the hard way last year, going up to Marquette on the road early in conference play, and you just let the other team get hot, and that's it. You run away with the game. I think Butler can do that too. Butler has the talent to do that. There's a lot of depth in this guard room, a lot of guys who can go off. So I think for the Friars, for both teams, to win the first 5 minutes, win the first two media timeouts there.
Yeah, you got to get off to a hot start, especially I would say more so almost for Butler, just because you start 0-2 and you lose games big in the end. You need to get out and say, no, we're still here. We're not giving up. Because if you show any glimpse of weakness against a Providence team, they're going to attack and that game is over. Done.
Yeah. So let's hear your prediction for it. Who wins?
I think Bryce Hopkins goes ballistic. That being said, I think Butler wins this game. I think it plays out very similar to that Kansas State game. I think the rosters are kind of similar in that Bryce Hopkins, Keontae Johnson, then you have a guy like Jared Bynum who could go off and could be that guy, like a Marquise Knoll, but a good setup guy going up against Eric Hunter. I think those are the key matchups. I think Providence has better depth and you can have they have Desi Sills who can go off. I think Allen Breed, same thing. He can do that. Noah Locke, guys like that. But I think Butler pulls out a close one. I think Hungry Dogs run faster. This is a huge, huge game for Butler. I would say a 75, 67 type game. I think Butler pulls it out close to the whole way.
Interesting. Yeah, I think the one other magic we didn't touch on in there, just from the Friars perspective, is how you defend Manny Bates in the paint. I don't know how well Ed Croswell is going to do it. That's going to put burden on Clifton Moore and Rafael Castro, both of whom have struggled defensively this year. So that'll be something to watch. If they can control Manny Bates on defense, and I think they will, I think Ed Cooley's defense is going to bounce back in the paint a little bit there. I'm going to say the Friars get this win. I think it's going to be close, but not too close. Kind of the reverse of what you said. We'll do the same numbers, but opposite teams.
I see it. Chuck Harris though is due for one of those games where he just goes ballistic. If that's
Yeah.
here, actually he plays at Georgetown next game. That's a homecoming, so maybe that's the spot. But that's here.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah. That's why I think if you're a Friar fan coming into this one, you get a game at DePaul on New Year's Day, which should be a win based on the way DePaul has been playing this year. You've already got 2 wins under your belt, including a road win against Seton Hall and a ranked win against Marquette. If you lose the game, this one's not a bad one to drop. Obviously, you want it. You want to win every game, but there's no shame in losing this one if you lose it.
You lose in Hinkle. Butlers look so much better in Hinkle than on the road. Aside from the UConn game, they've been like you have some of the best games of the year in Hinkle.
That feels like an evergreen comment. That's this team every year.
I have a buddy of mine's a manager on the team, one of my classmates, and he was just like, yeah, Thad Mott, he'll say like, I don't lose at home. Don't lose at home. You cannot. No, you are not losing at home. That is not happening. He emphasizes so much that you need to win at home. And this is one of those games where if you want to make the tournament, you are going to need to beat Providence on a good rest. You more or less need this game. And I think Hungry Dogs run faster.
Yeah. Well, you heard it there, folks. Michael DeRosa predicting the Butler win there. A must-win game for the Bulldogs at Hinkle Fieldhouse. This one is going to be a Thursday night tip at 6:30 Eastern. Is that 6:30 Eastern or 6:30 local?
Eastern and local. Indy is still EST.
I always forget about that. Yeah. That always trips me up.
When I thought I was going to school, I thought it was Central too.
So that'll be 6:30 Eastern time, Thursday night at Hinkle Fieldhouse. Find this one on Fox Sports 1. It's the 10-3, 2-0 in the Big East Providence Friars against the 8-5, 0-2 in the Big East Butler Bulldogs. Friars looking for another win against them. Thanks for joining me, Michael. Tell the people where they can find you.
Hey, anytime at MD the Dream on Twitter, Road to the Garden. You know the Road to the Garden account. Come on, you have to, please. The best Biggie. If you want to follow Biggie Soups, you got to Road to the Garden. All my stuff's on there. House Enterprise, you want to find anything I write, all up there. Let's go. Ready to roll.
Yeah. Go check out that stuff. Go check out our content at Road to the Garden there as well. I'm sure we're going to have some stuff after this one. But for now, thanks for joining, and we'll talk to you. I'm assuming Joe is going to be back on, and we'll probably be talking to you between Thursday night and Sunday afternoon at some point to recap this and talk about a Providence at DePaul game as the Friars round out this trip to the Midwest. Thank you for listening.